what I was saying. When Hagar found out that she had conceived and now she didn't like Sarah, despised her, and we get down to this, do you not think that maybe she thought that because she was carrying Abraham's child, that Abraham would defend her and put her in a better position? But now that Abraham said, no, she's yours, you deal with her, and she started dealing with her harshly, then she was going to run off. The angel of the Lord found her by a fountain of water in the wilderness, by the fountain in the way of Shur. And he said, Hagar, Sarah's maid, whence camest thou? And whither wilt thou go? And she said, I flee from the face of my mistress Sarah. And the angel of the Lord said unto her, return to thy mistress, and submit thyself into her hands. And the angel of the Lord said unto her, I will multiply thy seed exceedingly, that it shall not be numbered for multitude. And the angel of the Lord said unto her, behold, thou art with child, and shall bear a son, and shall call his name Ishmael, because the Lord had heard thy affliction, and he will be a wild man. His hand will be against every man, and every man's hand against him, and he shall dwell in the presence of all his brethren. And she called the name of the Lord that spake unto her, Thou God seest me, for she said, have I also here looked after him that seeth me? Wherefore the well was called Beer-lahai-roth. Behold, it is between Kadesh and Bered. And Hagar bare Abram a son, and Abram called his son's name, which Hagar bare, Ishmael. There is a verse in here that we can look back on history today and see just how prophetical that one verse is. He will be a wild man. His hand will be against every man, and every man's hand against him. From a few years after this event up to today, what takes place in that big place we call Arabia that includes Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Iran, Iraq, Syria, Kuwait? What takes place over there right now? Has there ever been stability in that whole region? There has been in this little kingdom and that little kingdom, but as that whole unit exists, has there ever been peace? Nothing but turmoil. And one will side against another for their own gain. Today, the ones that are tight and friendly, all it takes is one little thing, and tomorrow the setup could be totally changed. Bobby, you're familiar with this kind of stuff. Is that pretty much right on point? So, to me, when I read that verse and think about what's going on over there today, like I said, to me, it just puts out how prophetic that verse was. Well, it goes back to, and I have not studied the Quran, so I don't know. I do study world religions, but that's one I don't mess with. But from what I have read of those that do study that, in essence, there are two branches of the Muslim religion. One is the peaceful, and one is the radical, that they will take everything that they can find in there to make things more radical. And you can see that it's kind of understandable, because if you look at the history of Christianity, why aren't Christians all united. I mean, in the Christian religion, and it used to be that there were some in the Christian religion that were just as violent as the Muslims. If you go back into the Crusades and things like that. But if we all came from the same spot, why are we not more united today? Anybody got an answer? Pardon? Man thinks he's smarter than God. I'd heard the word power in there. A lot of times it comes to that too. People do things because they want to be important, and they take things and run with them. Yesterday, for instance, one of the people that was on the outreach team and went out and knocking doors got tangled up with a holiness preacher, and was being told that the only way that we can understand the Bible is after the Holy Ghost has come into our life. Where did they get that? Where is it in the Bible? Why does it say study to show thyself approved? Why does it say that everything is written by the inspiration of God? Why are we to search the Scriptures daily? If we can't understand it until something miraculous happens to us, why does it say all that? So where did he get it? Don't know. But that's where that branch went. And that's the same thing that happens with those 12 tribes. They're just vying for power. If you look at what goes on in that part of the world today, what is the only thing that they respect? Money equals power. Power is all important. So they devour the weak and sidle up next to and want to be buddies with the powerful. Sorry? Influence. Yes, sir. It could be. After all, God, Christ is the Word, right? And we'll see how that works a little later on too here. But chapter 6, verse 16. And Abram was 80, meaning 80, and 6 years old when Hagar bare Ishmael to Abram. So he's 86 years old. How many of us in here hope we live to be 86? How many of us want kids at 86? How many of us want kids at 50? I firmly believe what I have heard, that in a grandparent's life, the happiest times are when they see the headlights coming and the tail lights going. So we like them for a brief period of time. Anything on chapter? Yes, sir, Brother Golden. Yes, sir. Okay. Anything else on 16 then? As we move into 17, when Abram was 90 years old, 90 and 9. So he was 86, and now he's 99. The Lord appeared to Abram and said unto him, I am the Almighty God, walk before me and be thou perfect. Also, let's go back for just a second. The angel of the Lord, when he had told him that she was going to have a child, and it was going to be a male child, and give Hagar the name that the child was going to be called, as far as I can remember what we've gone through, this is the first time that God has told somebody what their offspring would be called. Right? And then we get up to the next event. God tells them who it's going to be. And then when we get up all the prophecy, and when we get into the New Testament, Christ is going to be called. Like I say, that's just a little extra on the side. He's 99 years old. The Lord appeared to him and said, walk before me and be thou perfect, and I will make my covenant between me and thee, and will multiply thee exceedingly. And Abram fell down on his face, and God talked with him, saying, as for me, behold, my covenant is with thee, and thou shalt be a father of many nations. Neither shall thy name any more be called Abram, but thy name shall be Abraham, for a father of many nations have I made thee. And I will make thee exceedingly fruitful, and I will make nations of thee, and kings shall come out of thee. And I will establish my covenant between me and thee, and thy seed after thee, and their generation, for an everlasting covenant, to a God unto thee, and to thy seed after thee. And I will give unto thee, and to thy seed after thee, the land wherein thou art a stranger, in the land of Canaan, for an everlasting possession, and I will be their God. And God said unto Abraham, thou shalt keep my covenant, therefore, thou and thy seed after thee in their generations. This is my covenant which ye shall keep between me and you and thy seed after thee. Every man child among you shall be circumcised. So this is now the introduction of circumcision. And ye shall circumcise the flesh of your foreskin, and it shall be a token of the covenant betwixt me and you. Now see, this was a one-sided covenant. God said, this is what I'm going to do for you. There was no convention or anything. There was no debate about it. God said, this is the way it's going to be. And now you do this to show that you are basically in agreement with it. And he that is 8 days old shall be circumcised among you, every man child in your generation, he that is born in the house or bought with money of any stranger, which is not of thy seed. 8th day. What is special about the 8th day that they should be circumcised on the 8th day? Brother Golden? Today, doctors don't pay much attention to that because we've got many methods of intervening drug clotting stuff. They use different techniques and all. But medically speaking, if everything is left natural, when a child is born, the 8th day is when they have gotten everything, well, without getting too technical, they got everything together to help fight disease, and also the clotting effect to take care of any cuts. So God knew this because God created us, and he told Abram when the best time to do it was. He that is born in thy house and he that is bought with thy money must needs be circumcised, and my covenant shall be in your flesh for an everlasting covenant. Again, this goes back to their culture, their tradition, that everything in that household belonged to the master, the owner. So therefore, everything in the house had to comport to the rules. And then the uncircumcised man-child, whose flesh of his foreskin is not circumcised, that soul shall be cut off from his people. He hath broken my covenant. So that's where he sets up the dividing line, is you show that you're following my rules, everything's good. Those that don't, they're going to be excluded. If we break that down into today, circumcision is not required for Christians. However, doesn't it tell us that it's circumcision of the heart? Doesn't it tell us that today, if our heart is not in the right place, that we're not with God, so we are excluded? We have here they were following physical rules, and the New Testament puts us into the spiritual rules, the heart. So if we're not obeying from the heart today, then basically, if we want to look at it, we are not circumcised in the heart, are we? So if we don't obey from the heart today, we're set apart. We're away from the people. And here it was the physical. If you're not doing this, then you're going to be set apart. Questions, comments? God said unto Abraham, as for Sarah, thy wife, thou shalt not call her Sarah anymore, but Sarah. I've never been able to differentiate the pronunciation of those two words. But anyway, the spelling was changed. And I will bless her and give thee a son also of her. Yea, I will bless her, and she shall be a mother of nations. King of people shall be of her. Then Abraham fell upon his face and laughed, and said in his heart, shall a child be born unto him that is 100 years old, and shall Sarah that is 90 years old bear? What kind of laugh was this? Got to be kidding me. Okay. Was it one of this? Okay, time out. Yes, not so. Explain. Okay. You're on the track that I'm on, but we might be just a little bit odd here, because what you said when Abram said unto God that Ishmael might live before thee, what was the custom of the day? The firstborn would be the most honored. So Abraham is trying to stick with that line that the firstborn should be the honored one. So he is sort of trying to tamper with what God is doing, because God is telling him that Sarah's going to have one where everything's going to happen. Brother Golden. Right. And I know if you just take some things, every one of us in here, without exclusion, when we have been under maybe stress or something happened, haven't you sort of went, huh, to relieve the stress? You don't think you're doing it, but that's what you're doing. So God gave us a marvelous body. He gave us ways to cope with things. Personally, I do not believe that Abraham was being cynical in any way. I believe it was more like, oh, okay, type thing, rather than a, hey, you got to be kidding me type thing. So, because we go on down here, and God said, Sarah, thy wife, shall bear thee a son indeed. Thou shalt call his name Isaac, and I will establish my covenant with him for everlasting covenant, and with his seed after him. And as for Ishmael, I have heard thee. Behold, I have blessed him, and will make him be fruitful, and will multiply him exceedingly. 12 princes shall he beget, and I will make him a great nation. But my covenant will I establish with Isaac, which Sarah shall bear unto thee at this set time in the next year. That spells it all out right there. Ishmael is going to be great. He's going to have 12 princes, sons. He's going to have a great nation. However, the covenant that I am making with Isaac, the religious end of it, is going to go through that chain. Questions, comments? Yes, sir. He left off talking with him, and God went up from Abraham. And Abraham took Ishmael his son, and all that were born in his house, and all that were brought with his money, every male among the men of Abraham's house, and circumcised the flesh of their foreskin in the selfsame day, as God had said unto him. And Abraham was 90 years old and 9 when he was circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin. And Ishmael, his son, was 13 years old when he was circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin. In the selfsame day was Abraham circumcised, and Ishmael, his son, and all the men of his house, born in the house and bought with money of the stranger, were circumcised with him. Now there is the unity in Abraham's house. God said, this is what you're going to do. Abraham did it. So now we've got that in place. Questions or comments then on 17? Brother Golden. Right. Anything else on 17? The Lord appeared unto him in the plains of Mamre, and he sat in a tent door in the heat of the day. By the way, we'll probably get to this a little bit later, but the area of land that God was going to see that these people got, Abraham and his kin got, ran all the way from the river of Egypt, which was what river? What river runs through Egypt? The Nile, all the way up to the Euphrates. That's a pretty massive territory. And where would Mamre be geographically? We know it's in Canaan. It's later going to be called Hebron, or close to Hebron, which is probably about the middle ways of the north to south. But he lifted up his eyes and looked, and lo, 3 men stood by him. And when he saw them, he ran to meet them from the tent door and bowed down himself toward the ground. There's a little confusion over the wording of this particular passage. If you compare different versions of the Bible, they will say different things. Here it says that 3 men stood by him. In our language today, what would that mean if somebody were standing by him? Next to him, right? Other translations say against him, which would mean that they're close. But in essence, he saw him coming, and it's not that they're standing right next to him, or else why would he have run? And again, you have to put things in some logical terms. In his day, well, let's just take it back to my days growing up in the country. I can see somebody across the field, 2 or 3 miles away, and I know they're standing right there. But if I was standing right next to them, I would know that they were standing right there. If I was standing right next to them, I would know that they were standing right there. 200 yards away, and they're close by because a neighbor might have been 10 miles away. So you got to put things in a little perspective here. But he saw these three coming, thought them to be men, ran to meet them, and said, My Lord, if now I've found favor in thy sight, pass not by, I pray thee, from thy servant. Why would he address them as Lord and him servant and ask them not to pass by if he did not know at that point that one of them was a messenger from God? Again, it was their custom. Any stranger that come by them, they wanted to take care of. If a person was in, well, even when we go into chapter 2 later, when we get to Sodom, the people that went into Lot's house, what was Lot doing? He was looking out for those people. If somebody spent the night with them or was in their house, it was the owner's responsibility to take care of them. They honored them in that way. I remember when I was growing up, people come to visit, and they just happened to show up at dinner time. Did you postpone dinner? What if you didn't have enough? You spread it a little thinner, or you put a little bit more water in the soup. You made it go. You made it stretch out to meet the needs of everybody there. Here they were taking care of them. And he said, let a little water, I pray you, be fetched, and wash your feet and rest yourselves under the tree. He was just doing the custom of the thing. Strangers coming by, I'm going to take care of them. I'm going to feed and water them. Yes, sir. Right. Correct. What Brother Clients mentioned was, isn't this a verse where we equate Hebrews 13 to? You might be entertaining angels unawares, and this is what he was doing for a while. I will fetch a morsel of bread and comfort you, your hearts. After that you shall pass on, for therefore are ye come to your servant. And they said, So do as thou hast said. And Abraham hastened into the tent unto Sarah and said, Make ready quickly 3 measures of fine meal, knead it, and make cakes upon the hearth. And Abraham ran into the herd and fetched a calf, tender and good, and gave it unto the young man, and he hastened to dress it. And he took butter and milk and the calf which he had dressed, and set it before them. And he stood by them under the tree, and they did eat. Now, he was in the tent door. If any of you have ever camped out, Bobby, I know you do. But in the summertime, when it's really hot and you're really tired, are you going to be in that tent laying down, or are you going to be sitting in the door for a little bit of a breeze coming through? You're going to get out of the sun, but you're going to be trying to catch a breeze of air. So nothing uncommon there. But now he has fed them and he's took care of them. And verse 9 says, And they said unto him, Where is Sarah thy wife? And he said, Behold, in the tent. And he said, I will certainly return unto thee according to the time of life, and lo, Sarah thy wife shall have a son. And Sarah heard it in the tent door, which was behind him. And now Abraham and Sarah were old, well stricken in age, and ceased to be with Sarah after the manner of women. Therefore Sarah laughed within herself, saying, After I am waxed old, shall I have pleasure, my Lord, being old also? And the Lord said unto Abraham, Wherefore did Sarah laugh, saying, Shall I of a surety bear a child which am old? Did Sarah laugh out loud? She laughed within herself. The Lord said unto Abraham didn't know that she had laughed within herself. The Lord did. So this is Abraham's first indication of who these visitors are. He knew something was going on. and said, "Is anything too hard for the Lord?" At that time, at the time appointed, I will return unto thee, according to the time of life, and Sarah shall have a son. And this goes back to what Brother Golden had said earlier, that Abraham said he was 99 and said, can an old man 100 years old have a child? And now it's coming back down to here, tying it in, that the normal pregnancy is 9 months. So this now goes from that time to Abraham being 100. Thank you all for your comments and your attention.